In a world that still weighs a woman's worth by her relationships, her roles, her attachments, what happens when she chooses solitude, not because she's given up on love, but because she's reclaiming something far more sacred? More women today are making this choice, and it's not a pause, it's not waiting, it's not bitterness, it's a quiet revolution. They are stepping into the unknown, not to escape connection, but to discover who they are beyond it. Society has called them names: lonely, broken, rebellious, incomplete. But Carl Jung, the father of analytical psychology, saw through the illusion. To him, a woman's solitude was not her weakness. It was her crucible, a place where her soul is transformed, where she faces the hidden parts of herself that she once projected onto others. Because when a woman lives alone, she doesn't just live without someone. She begins to live with herself, and that is the beginning of everything. For generations, a woman's value was bound to her ability to care for others, to nurture, to serve, to give. She was expected to be a wife, a mother, a daughter. And if she strayed from those roles, she was often seen as failed, suspicious, or tragic. Independence was not freedom, it was a threat. A woman alone? She must be pitied or feared, but something powerful is changing. Not just on the outside, but in the psyche of women everywhere. More and more, women are choosing not to follow the script. They're not doing it to spite love. They're doing it because they've seen a deeper truth. You don't need someone else to be whole. Economic freedom, higher education, and social change play a role, yes. But Jung would say there's something deeper happening. This shift is not just political, it's archetypal. When a woman decides to stand on her own, she's not turning away from men. She's turning inward. She's meeting the Animus, the masculine energy within her. The part of her that speaks with authority, that leads, that acts, that defends. Jung believed that every woman holds within her an unconscious masculine counterpart, her animus. When she depends too much on others, especially on men, that energy stays buried. It never matures, it becomes distorted. But when she is alone, when she is forced to stand in her own power, she is also forced to meet this inner masculine. And she must now become what she once sought in others: decisive, protective, grounded. This journey is rarely smooth. Even now, society whispers the same old stories. She's just waiting for someone. She's afraid. She's too much. She'll regret this. But Jung's lens tells another story. A woman who no longer projects her animus onto others, who no longer looks for a man to complete her, steps into a new level of maturity. She begins to embody both softness and strength. She doesn't reject connection. She simply no longer clings to it. And so the question is not, why is she alone, but what is she becoming? At the heart of Jung's work is the concept of individuation, the sacred process of becoming your truest self. Not the self others told you to be, not the self that performs, but the self that lives when no one else is watching. Solitude, for a woman, becomes the vessel for this transformation. Without the daily reflections of others, she's left to face the one reflection that matters, her own. This silence can be terrifying. It strips away distractions. It demands honesty. And it begins to ask the hardest questions. Who am I without the roles, without the labels, without anyone to impress, serve, or belong to? But solitude is not always healing. Jung warned of its danger too. When chosen out of fear, isolation becomes a prison. A woman may use solitude to hide instead of heal. She may mistake defense for empowerment, closing her heart instead of opening her mind. But when solitude is chosen with awareness, when it is embraced as a path, not an escape, it becomes sacred. She learns to sit with herself, to soothe herself, to validate herself, to grow without applause. And in this quiet, something remarkable happens. Her shadow begins to rise, to be continued. And yet, even in today's world, the woman who chooses solitude often finds herself navigating a landscape of subtle judgment and quiet pity. Well-meaning voices ask her, "So, when are you going to settle down?" As if her life has not yet truly begun. As if a woman's story only starts once someone else enters the frame. As if being alone is the same as being unfinished. The stereotype of the unloved woman still lingers in cultural memory. She's portrayed not as a visionary or a seeker, but as someone to be pitied. A side character in her own story. But the truth is far more powerful. Many women internalize these messages and begin to question themselves. They wonder, is there something wrong with me for wanting this? Is my independence a flaw? Or is it a form of freedom? This is where the line between healthy solitude and harmful isolation becomes crucial. Solitude, when chosen with clarity, is alive. It is not withdrawal, it is engagement. It is the space where a woman listens to her own rhythm, defines her own terms, and moves in the world with inner alignment. Isolation, on the other hand, is something else. It's a wall. It is often born from unhealed pain or fear. It becomes a shield, a false sense of safety that eventually hardens the heart. Jung emphasized that the goal of deep psychological growth is not to escape human connection, but to meet it from a place of wholeness. A woman who isolates might be avoiding the parts of herself that hurt, but the woman who consciously chooses solitude, she is not escaping anything. She is walking directly into the fire of her own truth. And so she asks herself, am I here because I'm hiding, or am I here because I'm healing? The answer to that question transforms everything. It decides whether solitude becomes a prison or a doorway, a place of limitation or liberation. Jung's teachings on feminine archetypes reveal something radical. Solitude isn't just personal, it's initiatory. It's a rite of passage, a sacred unfolding. The Great Mother archetype, the one who nurtures, who gives, who sustains, has a hidden layer too. Her shadow form teaches us a forgotten wisdom, that nurturing doesn't always mean giving to others. It also means learning to nourish yourself. The woman who lives alone doesn't reject this archetype. She reclaims it. She becomes both the mother and the child in her own life, tenderly witnessing her pain while courageously guiding herself forward. And then there is the wise woman. She doesn't emerge through others' approval. She is born in silence, in self-reflection, in the quiet where no one is watching. Solitude is not emptiness, it is a sacred space where the truest form of wisdom can rise. Ancient cultures understood this. They honored the solitary feminine. The goddess Artemis, wild and untamed, chose the forest over the altar. The oracle of Delphi, silent, listening, channeling truth from the unknown. Even Baba Yaga, the feared witch of the woods, embodied both terror and transformation. These women, mythical or real, walked the same path many modern women now tread. Even in today's world we hear the echoes. The artist who found her voice in silence. The entrepreneur who stopped asking for permission and started trusting her gut. The healer who met her gift not in the noise, but in the stillness. One woman said, "It was only in solitude that I stopped performing womanhood and started experiencing it." Another shared, "In the quiet, I met parts of me I didn't know I had abandoned." These are not isolated stories. They are proof of something timeless, that the woman who chooses to be alone is never truly alone. She is in communion with the most essential parts of herself. This is where the story turns, where we challenge everything we thought we knew. What if living alone isn't a sign of emptiness, but of fullness? What if it isn't a gap, but a homecoming? What if the woman who walks this road is not escaping love, but becoming it? In solitude, she touches the divine feminine within her. She steps into a legacy shared by priestesses, mystics, creators, those who chose stillness so they could hear the whispers of their own soul. Jung would say, "This is true individuation, not the illusion of independence, but the reality of inner integration." She becomes both the light and the shadow, the fierce and the tender. She no longer waits to be chosen, she chooses herself. This isn't about rejecting men, it's about welcoming herself, all of herself. And in doing so, she stops searching for home, because she realizes she is the home. So now we turn to you. Have you tasted this solitude? Have you dared to sit in silence? Have you met the parts of yourself you once gave away too easily? Tell us what you've discovered. Has solitude been your mirror, your medicine, or does society still make it feel like a taboo? Let's talk. Let's explore this sacred path together. And remember, you don't have to live alone to experience this transformation. You simply have to stop fearing the quiet and start listening to what it has to say. Because in that silence, you may meet the one person you've always been searching for, your true self.